to Regulated and Relational, a bi-monthly podcast brought to you by the Attachment and Trauma Network. In this episode, Julie and Ginger invite Diane Gould into the studio. Diane is a licensed clinical social worker and a leading expert on autism, with particular insight into the complex PDA profile, Pathological Demand Avoidance. Let's listen as they explore this concept.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Regulated and Relational, our podcast produced by the Attachment and Trauma Network. I'm Ginger Healy.
And I'm Julie Beam.
And we're excited to share with you from both our personal experiences and our professional knowledge what it truly means to be attachment-focused, trauma-informed, and how we can help children impacted by early childhood trauma. Today, we're diving into a topic that's still emerging in recognition and understanding, and that's pathological demand avoidance, or PDA. And so we reached out to an expert, a guest, someone who's been at the forefront of this movement, Diane Gould. Welcome to the studio, Diane.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're so happy you're here. Julie, will you introduce our listeners to Diane?
Gladly. Diane Gould is a licensed clinical social worker and the founder and executive director of PDA North America, and a co-author of the recently released book, Navigating PDA in America. With over 40 years of experience in working with neurodivergent individuals and their families, Diane has made it her mission to raise awareness and provide support for PDA, a profile of autism marked by an extreme avoidance of everyday demands due to anxiety. Diane's work has brought life-changing insight to families and professionals alike, and she continues to lead the way in education, advocacy, and systems change. In a personal and professional journey that took a powerful turn this year with her own autism diagnosis, Diane brings unique expertise, compassion, and deep understanding of this conversation. So we're honored to have her here today to inform us about PDA, why it matters, and what we can do to support those who live with it. So Diane, there's a lot there. There's a lot there in your intro. So talk to us about this personal and professional journey that, sort of walk us through how you got here today.
Well, you froze for a minute, but you can hear me, right?
Yep.
Hard to figure out where to start. So I've always been highly focused on human behavior and especially neurodivergence. I started actually as a kid, as a volunteer in our local special recreation association at 15. And I, stayed for years as a volunteer. Just people have always intrigued me. And, I spent my career working at child welfare agencies and in special ed programs, and more focused on serving autistic people. I was on the professional advisory board for the Autism Society in Illinois, where I live, talked about autism, and actually thought I understood it way more than I actually did, which I think will come up when we talk more about PDA. I decided at some point I couldn't really have a boss anymore, so I started private practice. So I have a private practice outside Chicago, and probably in 2019 was working with a family who had a young adult autistic son. And I think anything that's ever happened in the disability world, anywhere, happened because there was a mom who wouldn't take no for an answer.
I agree.
And she kept saying, like, do you know about PDA? And I'm like, I heard of it. And, there's always stuff popping up in autism. And I probably got used to ignoring it because so much of it was snake oil. And she was like, you have to pay attention. And she sent me article after article after article until I'm like, okay, I will pay attention. And when I read about PDA, I was fascinated in part, which you all will be interested in part because I had been working with nonprofit attorneys in Chicago who were representing kids in Chicago public schools with horrendous trauma histories. And I spent some time as a behavior analyst, which I'm no longer a behavior analyst, which is another story, but spent some time trying to serve those kids. And the recommendations I was giving for those kids in my assessments was so much more like the PDA recommendations in all the PDA articles than in kind of traditional autism or disability work.
Right.
Or, okay. As a behavior analyst. So it was kind of coming together my interests. I was never kind of a traditional behaviorist anyhow, but I drank the Kool-Aid a little bit more than now I wish I had. So I thought, oh, this is really coming together of my interests of kind of trauma and autism. And I'm kind of a problem solver by nature. So I'm like, all right, there's a problem. People need to know this. I'll figure it out. So and do something. So I got training from an expert in the UK in PDA certification, but pretty early on in that training, I thought, you know what? Come to America. I'll host a workshop. We'll see if anyone comes. And she had a friend who was going to join, a PDA adult. And I was like, if no one shows up, we'll go shopping. We'll go to the Chicago restaurants. It will be fun. And people showed up. And it was March 2020, right before the world shut down.
Right. Yeah. I mean, good.
All the families took the toilet paper from their hotel rooms. We bought all the hand sanitizer at the gift shop. And we got the speakers back on the last international flights to the UK right before the world shut down. And the world shutting down actually was helpful because it gave me a chance to really figure out what to do about this. I got a website up and running, but I hadn't really thought past the workshop. And we had 165 people come from all over, and there was not a dry eye in the house. Like after 5 minutes, just people felt so seen and finding community. But I hadn't really thought about what I was going to do, but it became so clear that this had to be a beginning, not an ending. So, it's funny at the end of the workshop, we did a Q&A and problem solving and discussion. And I was like, well, maybe I'll start like PDA America. And there was this big group of really sweet, kind Canadians who kind of raised their hands. And they're like, can it be PDA North America? So we can be on the
Yes.
So that's how PDA North America was found. Nice. And it's been growing and growing and growing. And also in the personal journey, and we'll probably get to this. So understanding PDA means understanding autism more accurately and more broadly in a less stereotypical and more nuanced way. And that helped me personally so much in recognizing my own neurodivergence. So awesome. I can talk more about that, or we can go on. I can say what GA is that might be helpful for people.
Well, I think that's exactly where I want to go next. I want you to imagine that many of our listeners may have never even heard of the word or phrase PDA.
Right.
So teach us as if like 101 basics. Let's start there.
Sure. Yeah. And just so people know too, we have a free PDA 101 webinar the first Thursday evening of every month. So people just finding PDA can easily, kind of learn about it.
We'll put that in the show notes for sure, Diane.
And it's good to send that to your mother-in-law, your child
school teacher,
teacher, right? That kind of stuff. I kind of like to always start with some history when I'm trying to understand things. So in the 1980s in the UK, there was a psychologist who was diagnosing many, many children as autistic. And she noticed this subgroup of autistic kids who were different than the majority of autistic kids, but very much like each other. And one of the traits that stood out to her was that this group couldn't help avoiding everyday demands. And she called this group pathological demand avoidance because she wanted people to understand that they couldn't help it. They couldn't help avoiding demands. So she chose the word pathological intentionally. We kind of wish she hadn't, but it came from a good place. And now many autistic and PDA people have kind of renamed it either persistent or pervasive drive for autonomy to get rid of the word pathological, but also wanting to make the point that it's the drive for autonomy that is most important. The demand avoidance comes from the drive from autonomy. So it's more than just anxiety.
Okay.
And then, in the UK, awareness grew slowly. And then in 2011, the first book was written on PDA. 2014, the PDA Society, a charity nonprofit, was created in the UK. And they're kind of the world leader, and they were helpful to us kind of setting things up. So PDA is a neurodivergent profile. Most people do not think it's a standalone kind of category, although there's lots of different opinions and some do. The majority of people and everyone who's written books basically feels it's an autistic profile. So you can't be PDA without being autistic. However, especially recently, more people are questioning that and saying, maybe you can be ADHD and be PDA. We just don't know for many reasons, including lack of research, and it's hard to get a diagnosis, and so many people don't know about it. With PDA North America, which, of course, I started in 2020, we're like, hey, we welcome all beliefs and ideas,
Okay.
So come and use our services. We want to support everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So generally it's viewed as not standalone, but as a autistic profile. Most PDAers are also diagnosed as ADHD.
Okay.
So it's generally a profile of that. So there's other characteristics that are part of PDA. So it's more than demand avoidance. So we've been really focusing on awareness since 2020. So now we're having to say to people, not all demand avoidance is PDA, because we'll get calls from parents of 2, 3, 4-year-olds saying, my child doesn't do what they're told to do. I'm worried they're PDA, because they're hearing about PDA, which is a problem to have, but we're having to teach PDA is more than that. And it does have that overriding neurodivergence. What's really interesting and important, there's so many important things I think about spreading PDA awareness and understanding PDA. PDAers generally have more advanced social skills and communication skills than other autistic people, and are able to camouflage the difficulties they're having in situations. It's generally a high masking, a high camouflaging community. So often the struggles for PDA individuals are invisible and missed. So PDAers often struggle and don't get the support. Parents might and often actually do their own research and might come to the conclusion that their child is autistic, and then take their child to multiple evaluations and are told, oh, no, he makes eye contact. He can't be autistic. He's so social and she loves friends. She can't be autistic. Or they're so creative and imaginative. They can't be autistic. So the needs got unrecognized. Also, a characteristic of PDAers is they can act so differently in different settings. And particularly it comes up in school, where the child is just really holding everything together, highly anxious inside, being overly compliant, doesn't want any attention on them, and then falls apart when they walk in the door at home. So when the parents then report this to school, the school's like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, it must be a home problem, or is everything going okay at home?
Right.
And is the parenting consistent? And those kind of things. So it causes problems off the bat. Actually, what happens often, which is part of why we have PDA North America, is that schools don't recognize a student as having a problem until they stop coming to school.
Okay.
So we're really trying to educate schools. So PDAers, can act differently in different environments. They are very interested in social situations, but sometimes lack the skills to navigate friendships and relationships. They have a high need for control due to anxiety. They can have rapid mood swings because of just the anxiety and the emotional dysregulation that comes from having a highly sensitive and highly reactive nervous system. And because of these characteristics, PDAs are often misdiagnosed. In Black and Brown communities, their neurodivergence isn't even questioned or looked at. They might just be diagnosed as conduct disorder or oppositional defiant disorder. And there might not even be access to resources to diagnose for autism, because it also has to be a diagnostician who understands a more nuanced presentation of autism and hopefully PDA. But kids are misdiagnosed, and because of changes in mood and these meltdowns that we like to think of as panic attacks, but they can be aggressive, they can be frequent. And people are misdiagnosed as bipolar, borderline personality disorder. Most people come to PDA with all kinds of diagnoses.
Okay.
But individuals and parents say, they just never fit, just never. And behavioral and kind of autism strategies make things worse. Which is a problem. But one of the things that really sets this group apart, which is important to understand, is PDAers often can't make themselves do things they want to do. Most PDAers who don't go to school want to go to school. PDA kids might spend months looking forward to a vacation or a birthday party or a social event and not be able to get out the door. Because of
the anxiety, right?
The anxiety. Yep. They can't, even if they want to, which is why we do say it's a case of can't, not won't. It is not volitional, is not a choice. And it feels horrible to always have this push-pull. I want to, but I can't. Right. And other categories, I don't think anyone should be diagnosed as ODD. I don't think it's helpful at all. But
we agree.
It's, but these kids often are diagnosed as ODD, but they can't make themselves do things. Sometimes they can't make themselves respond to internal demands like eating or drinking or going to the bathroom or talking, even if they want to. And PDAers, an interesting thing about them, which I kind of love, I'm not sure if I'm PDA or not. Some people think I am, but I'm not so sure. I have demand anxiety more than avoidance. But anyhow, is that PDAers don't really feel authority or hierarchy matters at all. Like the early work on PDA always said they didn't see it. I don't think it's not that they don't see it. I think they don't think it matters. Like, why should a principal of a school get more respect than a second grader? Like, respect should be earned. So PDAers often get in trouble at school because they don't feel teachers or principals should get more respect.
Right. Have that immediate authority over them.
Right. Like it seems so arbitrary.
Right. Okay.
So, and PDAers are very creative, imaginative. Instead of outward refusing, which does sometimes happen, they often use social strategies to avoid, like distraction or delaying. PDAers, because they're imaginative, might go into a role play or character to avoid demands, but also to comply with demands. PDAers are great negotiators, but that can be to comply with demands as well as to avoid too. Most of them want to please, or all of them I know actually want to please the adults. They're just struggle with doing it too.
This is fascinating to me. I
It
have
is
a gazillion questions. I think
fascinating, and you know, and
I
like
want to talk about the line between PDA and where you think the lines are between PDA and trauma and like developmental trauma that has, you know, that sometimes overlaps with other neurodiversity type diagnosis.
Right.
Like there's like it's blurry there for me in general, but then with the PDA, it feels even blurrier. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially if you're late diagnosed, but even if you're not, no autistic person gets through life without trauma.
Yes.
You know, it's you know, there was a nurse in Illinois, I think, whose name I don't remember, but I loved, he called it sandpaper trauma, that it's not like an event, it's just every day.
Yes.
And I think, right, that is part of PDA. I think, you know, to me, autism means you have a different kind of nervous system, which is kind of how Donna Henderson describes it in her book, Is This Autism? And I think PDAers have a highly reactive and highly sensitive nervous system. And I think, you know, right, so nervous system is what's at play for people with trauma and autistic and PDAers. I think, you know, we probably all can agree that fight, flight, or freeze is underneath anything that people consider a challenging behavior.
Right. It's a stress response. Yeah.
Right. It's not like, I think I'm going to hit right now. So I think that is a big overlap. My message to the trauma-informed community, and, you know, since I've been diagnosed as autistic, I'm much more like, I don't know, reactive, or maybe a stronger advocate in wanting people who identify themselves as being trauma-informed to realize you also need to be neurodiversity informed as well. That it doesn't get you all the way there. You have to understand neurodivergence and neurodivergent people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because the overlap in symptoms and in sensations leads to misdiagnosis, inappropriate treatment plans, so many problems that, and you even said autism strategies don't work with PDAers, which, you know.
Right. And not only do they not work, they make things worse. When I started working in PDA in like 2019, as I was building up to the conference, I started trying to talk about it more. And I was so struck by parents, whether there was like a parent of a 5-year-old on a farm in Idaho or a parent of a 15-year-old in an apartment in Manhattan. They all told the same stories. And one of the things every family said is how they tried so hard to follow the advice from their pediatrician, from professionals in their life, from the parenting books, which are all behavioral.
Yeah.
And not only did it didn't make things better, but it made things worse. And that is kind of why I thought we need to get this message out, because behavioral strategies make things worse, even if they work very short term, and then people think like, oh, it's working. There's a long-term cost.
Right.
And PDAs really need a relationship-based approach. They need a lot of support, which is challenging for people to get their heads around, how you can need a lot of support but still need autonomy. And schools struggle with that all the time. But PDAs need both. They need collaboration, partnership, and everything comes out of a trusting relationship. Pressure, anything used to motivate people, all that makes things worse.
Okay. All righty.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're gonna delve into exactly what does work and what the adults around the PDAers can do to be the biggest help.
Hi, Lauren here. Are you looking for a way to show the world that you're becoming trauma-informed? Are you a school principal, team leader, or office manager wondering how to get your whole staff started on this trauma-informed journey? ATN's Trauma-Informed Certification was designed with you in mind. This online certification is for anyone who wants to apply trauma-informed principles to your care of children. This 3-unit course takes about 5 hours to complete, with videos, interactive knowledge checks, and downloadable notes. Once all 3 units are complete with a score of 80% or above, you receive your certificate and certification badge to share your accomplishment with all your friends and colleagues. This Level 1 certification never expires. And for those of you who have been working in trauma-informed care for a while, there's a test out option that allows you to obtain this credential without the coursework. Now is a great time to join me in documenting your trauma-informed knowledge with ATN's Level 1 Trauma-Informed Certification. Additional certification levels are currently under development to further your journey and will be available in 2026.
Hi, everybody. We're back with Diane Gould, who is the founder of PDA North America and is talking to us today about what PDA is and what, how we can identify it and what we need to do to support folks who have this particular profile. So, Diane, talk to us a little bit about if we are parents or teachers of a child that we suspect has PDA or that actually has the diagnosis, what should we be doing? What can we do to help?
I want to start by saying that I think PDA, the approach can be used with everyone, regardless of them having a diagnosis or not. Because it's really relationship-based, being attuned to the needs of a human. So I think parents don't have to worry about that the siblings aren't going to be treated this way or other classmates. I think it's respectful and it's kind. So there's no harm in that. When in 2020, when I did that first workshop, one of the PDA adults said, I hate the word strategies. I wish no one would use that word. And I thought, oh, I use the word strategies. I didn't say that, but I was like, I always use the word. And it actually took me until probably last year to get it. In fact, I want to say I've learned more about autism, about therapy, about education, about human behavior in the last 5 years since working on PDA, or in the PDA world, than I had in like the 35 years prior, including about strategies. And it took me a long time to figure it out, but strategies can be kind of rolled out and taken back. And they're usually taken back and rolled out based on someone else's need, like when it's convenient and works with parent or caregiver or teacher. But what needs to happen is more a paradigm shift, a mindset, a whole approach. And it's based on trust. It's based on a trusting relationship. It's based on co-regulation, which you guys as trauma people know about, is having another nervous system, a calm nervous system, regulate your nervous system. And having trusted people, it can be a challenge sometimes, because let's say schools, and I don't want to be bashing schools, and I don't intend to. And we are hoping to roll out a school-based training on PDA in the fall for schools. But like schools might say, oh, there's trusted people. So-and-so's a trusted person. So-and-so's a trusted person. But
don't get to name that.
Child needs to decide who's trusted or not.
Yeah.
That's a new way of thinking. So a relationship-based approach, very attuned, based on collaboration and partnership, like sharing tasks as equals is a huge part. I think people struggle with the concept of fluctuating capacity and inconsistencies. So a parent or professional might say, wait, he could handle the assembly last month. How come he can't go to the assembly?
Right.
Or he was fine on the library trip last week, or the math quiz, and not understanding that people show up differently at a given moment. Their window of tolerance changes. That stress is cumulative, and that gets in the way of support. In our whole mindset that we need to push a little, to motivate, that children won't do the right thing on their own or won't learn if left alone. And that is certainly not true for PDAers who love to learn and are curious. So sharing tasks, because they do need the support. I think, which schools do not like when I say this, but I think students need to be able to opt out of things they don't feel they can handle. I believe that most children start out as advocates. They say things like, I don't want to, get away from me. Like, I don't want to do it. But then we kind of can train that out of them. And then at age 14, start writing advocacy goals for them. But they've been doing it all along. I think we need to listen. I think kids can feel trapped in situations. I know of PDA adults or older kids who weren't able to go to school because they felt that if they were having a hard time at school and were highly anxious and worried about falling apart, they wouldn't be able to go home. Like, people wouldn't call their moms or dads to pick them up. They'd be trapped. So their only solution they had is not to go. So I think really having exit strategies for students, having safe places, having safe people. I think adults get hung up on treating everyone the same, which, I know we're all like-minded, fair and equal are different things. Not everybody needs to be treated the same. You can treat people different. Just fighting that kind of reward and consequence mentality. What people have a hard time with PDAers is understanding that even praise can add pressure and stress.
Right.
Yes.
Just like, and people don't understand, if they switch from a reward to consequence model to just a reward model, like, oh, we're positive, that the absence of a reward is a punishment. It's
Yes.
still
Yes.
punishment. It still adds stress and pressure. And anything that adds stress and pressure is not good for
Right.
PDAs. But I feel like it's highly possible to support PDAers. And I don't know. I mean, people tease me about being Pollyanna, but I think it's not as hard as people think it is.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because what I'm hearing you say is what we also teach in therapeutic parenting and in brain aligned, nervous system aligned, trauma sensitive schools, right? It sounds very neuroaffirming to me. So this to me makes sense and I can easily get on board. When you were saying, I want to clarify so that when you were saying that autism strategies make it worse. Now, I'm coming from a point of thinking neuroaffirming strategies. Were you saying things like behavior modification or, ABA, things like that? That's not
I
going
think
to work.
definitely, but also what doesn't work is a lot of structure set by adults, routines set by adults. PDAers crave novelty, and they can be very spontaneous. They don't like a lot of repetition and redundancy. So that is hard. Many PDAers also have learning differences and maybe learning disabilities. They can have processing differences, sensory differences, social differences. So I think all that needs to be understood and supported, which sometimes people forget to look at those things or fine motor challenges. Also, most autistic people have a co-occurring condition. Pretty much all PDAers have multiple co-occurring conditions, GI issues, sleep differences, and sometimes autoimmune differences. And they might need a lot of recovery time so attendance at school or getting there on time needs to be accommodated. And that is hard too. And they might need a lot of that, kind of more than other populations.
Well, that's why I love how you said it depends on, like, you have to have this individualized attunement to this child. And that makes perfect sense to me. I'm not saying it's easy,
right?
But when we're talking about support, and I love how you keep saying differences, we're looking at that reframe of this is a difference, it's not deficit. How do we support that? And it's through that individualized attunement. So thank you for that. That's what we need to hear.
One of the biggest reframes that we did in the Navigating PDA in America book is we're trying to change the language from school refusal, because I hate that term, to needs-based non-attendance. When someone can't get their need met, either because of how they're feeling that day or what a school is able to provide, it's just kind of a smart choice not to go. And we're calling it refusal. We're kind of blaming the child.
Right.
And forcing a child who doesn't feel safe to go to school, it just is not in anyone's best interest. The child, the parent, the school, it just makes no sense to me.
Right.
So we are trying to reframe a lot of concepts through PDA. The same way as, when I was younger in my career, I used to tell parents, and I'm so embarrassed by it now, but I keep talking about it. So Like I used to tell parents not to negotiate with their kids.
Oh,
I used to joke like, don't negotiate with terrorists or third graders. And, I thought I was very funny. And now I'm realizing, oh my God, all these kids who are negotiating are trying to meet our needs.
yes.
Wow.
Trying to get off that iPad or come to dinner when we say 5 minutes and they say 10. They're trying to find a way to make it work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, we got so many things wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is why, though, we're talking about it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's humbling. It's and just how I think that the PDA folks were so ahead in understanding autism. Like the PDA community has always said there's no gender difference. And it's just because, girls and women hadn't been recognized as being autistic because it looked different.
It looks different, right?
They were just so ahead. Actually, when I first approached Ruth Fiedler to write Navigating PDA in America with me, I had this whole list of questions on PDA, a whole notebook and she interrupted me on question 1 and said, we can't possibly talk about PDA until we talk about autism, because America is so behind and stereotypical in their understanding of autism. And I was so taken back. I did not expect that at all. And
wow.
So helpful. To the point, like one family recently, I kind of reconnected with a parent whose adult child just got diagnosed as autistic, who I saw probably when he was 10. And I'm like, feel free to bring him in and I can apologize. I can say it never entered my mind that he was autistic, because he didn't fit the stereotype that I had in my mind, nor did his school or his pediatrician, or, because we were just locked in to, as Devin Price says, like white boys lining up trains,
Right.
Offset. It's the psychologist who diagnosed me, she said, yeah, an intense interest in autism can sometimes be a symptom of being autistic. And I was like, oh, I never realized that. So thank you.
Yeah, well, the fact that you didn't recognize it in yourself or this young man that you were working with says, that here in America we do need to shift that.
Well, it's interesting too. I mean, I don't want to make this about me, but since I work in autism, I had consultations with 2 colleagues I really respected and just said, this is weird, but I want a consultation. They're like, okay. And I'm like, do you think I'm autistic? And they both said no. And then I don't know why, like one of those 3 a.m. Light bulbs. I thought, I should go to someone who I know professionally.
Yeah, it needs to be someone who does.
They know my professional sense.
Yeah.
And I know if I'm autistic. So I went to someone, I don't know, in a different state who doesn't know me. So, it totally makes sense now, but I didn't.
Yeah, that dynamic, that fluid, the masking, there's just so much there, to.
Right. Yeah. It's, so one of my, real missions, as part of helping people understand the PDA profile, because these people are misunderstood and don't get the support they deserve, is helping people understand autism differently, more accurately, more broadly. I think, I also hear from people in their 40s, 50s, 60s who have, been misunderstood their whole life. And, we need to change that. And parents who are blamed for their kids.
Yeah.
Right. For their kids' behaviors or whatever things are showing up.
Lack of school attendance, truancy, neglect.
All the things. Would you say too then that you're looking and focusing on the anxiety and treating the anxiety then as a form of the support?
So that's a great question. Thanks, Ginger, for asking. I feel, and some people might disagree with me, that traditional anxiety treatment is too direct, too harsh, and sometimes too rewards based for PDAers. It's like exposure therapy.
Right. In particular.
Right. It doesn't work for PDAers. It needs to really be done. Everything needs to be done in the context of a trusted relationship with a team. And traditional therapies for anxiety aren't so relationship based.
Right.
Too. So most things need to be modified for most PDAers too. And a lot of treatments also, and I mean, this doesn't work for me. It does for some autistic people, like use a lot of metaphors and imagery and those kind of things, which don't always work for PDA people too. They're just more direct and direct and hypothetical at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think when life is better, when people's needs are met, when there's more happiness and joy, less kind of things, less demands, less things forced, the anxiety and more co-regulation, the anxiety decreases.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because the nervous system is soothed. They feel safe. So therefore,
yeah.
I mean, well, that is all we believe in is, that regulation and that relationship. So that makes sense to us.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to change the world because, the typical methods don't really work for so many people. When I wrote that chapter in Navigating PDA in America on the U.S. education system, and I, gave my draft to my co-author, she said, "Write that," and I went, "What?" And then I went, "Oh, I'm not making this up. This is how it is."
Yes.
The functional behavior analysis and behavior support, intervention plans, which we're trying to change as stress support plans. Just reducing the stress in the students.
Right.
But it's an uphill climb.
That's just what I was thinking, is we're all on that same uphill trajectory of shifting mindsets, shifting the way that we look at what a behavior truly is, and and what needs to be done to to help the person whose behavior is causing issues, but the question is why. What is it communicating?
Right. And pretending that student or person is the only one with a nervous system in the situation.
Right.
There's so much work to do. There's some
on the adults who are helping that student.
But I mean, I feel like we're really making a difference in our short time here.
I was just going to ask you what you think is next, or how you feel like that.
Well, just to give you a little bit. So 3 conferences ago, we have a big annual conference in March. And 3 years ago, we had a little over 300 people. Last year, we had a little over 500. And I think our recent one, we had 760 people.
Wow. Cool.
Wow.
So it is growing. Awareness is growing. It's resonating with people. We need to raise more money, which we're not so good at, but we have a webinar almost every week for families. We have some support groups. We have tons of written resources, which we've just started translating into Spanish, which we're excited about.
Awesome.
Good. That's great.
We know there's so many communities we're not reaching, which is certainly a goal that we will keep work at, that we'll never, be done with. No one's ever turned down by inability to pay any of our fees for
Nice.
our
That's
virtual
awesome.
stuff. There's so much to do. I mean, our big task now is to get a self kind of directed school-based training out. We're hoping to launch that in fall.
Nice.
Parents are probably going to be the ones to pressure their schools to doing it.
Mhm.
But training's not enough, right? There has to be that commitment for change, but we're
Yes.
trying to do that. We're going to try to do a virtual one-day conference in addition to our annual conference, so we can just meet more specific needs. So we're working on one in the fall on burnout.
Oh, so good.
So we're excited about that. So we'll probably announce that in a few weeks. We're trying some regional conferences or workshops. We did one in Maryland in November and one in Boston last October. They use a lot of resources, so my little tiny team hates that I keep those.
We feel all of your pain.
I know.
Yeah.
No.
That's exciting. We're going to link all of that in the
Thank you.
show notes.
That's right.
Thank you.
And we're blown away. We knew this would be impactful. We can't thank you enough for your time today.
Oh, no, I'm very grateful for you to helping spread the PDA message. So thanks
It's
so
an
much.
important message, and we're glad to be a part of that for sure. So, thank you for being here, Diane.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for listening in. Check out the show notes to find out more about Diane's organization, her book, and the upcoming events. And we'll catch you all in our next episode.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Regulated and Relational. In our next episode, Julie and Ginger will dive into how attachment disorders show up in schools. A special thanks to Joe Kramer for donating the music. To learn more about the Attachment and Trauma Network, visit us at www.attachedtrauma.org. I'm Lauren Cassis, and as always, thank you for listening.